Most men think strength is about intensity, more emotion, more reaction, more expression. They believe if they feel deeply and show it honestly, that makes them real, grounded, powerful. But that belief is exactly what keeps them unstable. Because in the real world, the man who feels everything loudly is the man who gets controlled the easiest. True strength isn't emotional expression. It's emotional economy. Emotional minimalism is the ability to feel what matters and discard what doesn't. It's not numbness. It's precision. It's knowing which emotions deserve your attention and which ones exist only to pull you off center. Most men are exhausted, not because life is too hard, but because they carry emotions they don't need to carry. Resentment, overthinking, validation seeking, unnecessary guilt, unnecessary anger. The strongest men you've ever met weren't loud emotionally. They weren't reactive. They didn't explain themselves constantly. They didn't live inside their feelings. They chose when to engage and when to stay still. Their calm wasn't accidental. It was trained. This video is about stripping emotion down to what actually serves you. Not becoming cold, not becoming detached from life, but becoming selective. Because the less emotional noise you carry, the harder you are to shake, manipulate, or destabilize. And once you understand that, everything about how people treat you begins to change. Most men don't struggle because they feel too little. They struggle because they feel too much. About things that don't deserve that level of emotional investment. Every text gets analyzed. Every shift in tone becomes a threat. Every disagreement turns into an internal war. That constant emotional overengagement is what drains a man's power. Emotional minimalism starts with a hard truth. Not every feeling is important. Not every reaction is necessary. Not every emotional impulse deserves expression. When a man reacts to everything, he teaches the world that his inner state is easy to influence. People learn which buttons to press. Situations learn how to shake him. And over time, he loses authority over himself. Think about it. The man who explodes in anger, over-explains in conflict, or collapses into self-doubt after rejection, isn't weak because he feels. He's weak because he has no filter. His emotions run him instead of the other way around. Emotional excess creates predictability, and predictability kills respect. Emotional minimalism flips this. It teaches you to pause instead of react, to observe instead of absorb, to let emotions pass through you without turning them into identity. You still feel disappointment. You still feel frustration. You still feel desire. But you don't hand those emotions the steering wheel. This is why calm men intimidate chaotic environments. This is why silence unsettles manipulators. This is why emotionally economical men are harder to read, harder to provoke, and harder to control. They don't waste emotional energy proving themselves. They conserve it for moments that actually matter. The goal isn't suppression. Suppression creates pressure that eventually explodes. The goal is discernment. Knowing which emotions deserve your response and which ones should be ignored completely. Once you develop that filter, you stop bleeding energy everywhere, and people start adjusting to you instead of the other way around. Once you understand that emotional excess weakens you, the next step is learning discipline. Not over your feelings, but over your responses. This is where most men fail. They think strength means never feeling anything, so they either numb themselves or explode when the pressure builds too high. Emotional minimalism isn't about shutting down. It's about choosing. Every day you're presented with emotional invitations. Someone disrespects you. Someone ignores you. Someone tests you. Someone disappoints you. The average man accepts every invitation. He reacts instantly. He explains himself. He defends his intentions. He tries to be understood. And in doing so, he gives away control. A disciplined man asks a different question. Is this worth my emotional energy? Not everything deserves access to your inner world. Some situations deserve action, not emotion. Some deserve silence. Some deserve distance. And some deserve nothing at all. This is why emotionally minimal men are hard to shake. They don't rush to fill silence. They don't rush to correct misunderstandings. They don't rush to prove who they are. They understand that urgency is often a trap, a way to pull you into someone else's emotional frame. Look at how power works in any environment. The person who reacts the least usually holds the most leverage. Not because they're indifferent, but because they're grounded. They don't let other people dictate their internal state. Their emotions are stable, measured, and intentional. Emotional minimalism trains you to slow down your responses, to let moments breathe, to observe patterns instead of reacting to single events. When you do this, manipulation loses its grip. Drama stops working. Tests fall flat, and people are forced to deal with you as you are, not as a bundle of exposed nerves. This discipline isn't built overnight. It's trained through restraint, through resisting the urge to explain yourself, through sitting with discomfort without acting on it, through realizing that calm isn't passive, it's controlled strength. The man who masters this doesn't become colder, he becomes clearer. He stops wasting emotion on noise and starts reserving it for purpose. And that shift changes how people see him, how women respond to him, and how life moves around him. Here's the uncomfortable truth most men don't want to hear. People don't respect emotional excess. They respect emotional control. Not repression, control. There's a difference, and it matters. When you react strongly to everything, you signal instability. Not because emotions are wrong, but because unpredictability makes people uneasy. When someone knows they can trigger you, sway you, or pull you into explanation mode, they subconsciously downgrade your authority. This applies in relationships, friendships, work, and even family dynamics. Emotional minimalism reverses that dynamic. When you respond calmly, briefly, or not at all, people are forced to adjust to you. They don't know where your limits are yet, but they can feel that you have them. And boundaries that aren't loudly announced are often the strongest ones. This is especially true in attraction. Overexpressing emotions early doesn't build closeness, it creates imbalance. The man who says less, reacts slower, and doesn't rush to reassure or be reassured is perceived as grounded. Not distant, grounded. There's a quiet confidence in someone who isn't trying to control outcomes with words. Notice how emotionally minimal men move through conflict. They don't escalate. They don't argue to win. They don't defend their character every time it's questioned. They let actions speak, patterns reveal themselves, and consequences do the talking. This doesn't mean tolerating disrespect. In fact, it's the opposite. Emotional minimalism makes enforcement cleaner. When you walk away calmly instead of emotionally, the message lands harder. When you end a conversation without drama, people feel the loss more clearly. When you don't beg to be understood, others are forced to reflect. Less emotion doesn't mean less care. It means clearer care. You choose where your energy goes instead of leaking it everywhere. You stop confusing intensity with importance. You stop thinking volume equals truth. Over time, this changes how people treat you. They pause before crossing lines. They think twice before testing you. They sense that you won't chase closure, validation, or resolution, and that makes you harder to manipulate. Respect grows in the absence of desperation, And emotional minimalism removes desperation from your presence entirely. This is where most men get it wrong. Emotional minimalism is not about bottling things up or pretending you don't feel. That's suppression. And suppression always leaks out sideways, in resentment, in passive aggression, in burnout, in sudden explosions that seem to come out of nowhere. Emotional minimalism is selective expression. You still feel everything: anger, disappointment, attraction, hurt. But you don't let every feeling dictate your behavior. You process internally first, then decide if expression actually serves you. Most emotions don't need an audience. They need understanding. Suppressed men avoid emotion because they're afraid of it. Minimalist men respect emotion, but refuse to be ruled by it. That difference changes everything. A man practicing emotional minimalism doesn't explain himself into exhaustion. He doesn't overshare to feel close. He doesn't vent every frustration, hoping someone will validate him. He reflects, adjusts, and acts. His emotional world becomes quieter, but sharper. This is why emotionally minimalist men feel lighter over time, not heavier. They aren't carrying unresolved chaos. They're resolving it privately, then moving forward cleanly. Fewer emotional debts. Fewer lingering conversations. Fewer "I should have said this" moments. And here's the part most people don't talk about. Emotional minimalism protects your identity. When you react less, fewer people get access to your inner world. That means fewer people can distort it, misuse it, or weaponize it against you. You become harder to read, harder to shake, harder to pull off course. In relationships, this creates polarity instead of codependence. In life, it creates clarity instead of noise. You stop outsourcing emotional regulation to other people and take responsibility for it yourself. That's not weakness, that's mastery. The goal isn't to feel nothing. The goal is to feel fully and respond intentionally. That's what makes emotional minimalism real strength. True strength isn't loud, it isn't reactive, and it definitely isn't scattered. Emotional minimalism is the decision to stop bleeding energy into places that don't deserve it. It's choosing clarity over chaos, response over reaction, self-control over emotional exposure. Not because you're cold, but because you're disciplined. When you reduce emotional noise, your presence sharpens, your decisions improve. Your relationships either deepen or fall away. And both outcomes serve you. You stop explaining yourself to people who aren't listening. You stop chasing validation from people who benefit from your uncertainty. This is how men become unshakable. Not by hardening their hearts, but by mastering them. If you're learning how to move through life with calm authority, fewer words, and stronger boundaries, hit follow. This is where you refine that edge.